Hello everybody, Jayma Malme here. Today we are going to create a double page scrapbook layout with 7 photos. As you can see here, I've got some outdoor photos. These are from a hike that we used to enjoy doing when we lived in Indiana, which ended with this creek that the whole family enjoyed finding rocks and throwing them. The dog just would plop down in the water on a hot, muggy day in the Midwest. So I'm going to scrapbook this today. And I've got them divided by kind of the end of the hike in the water and then on the hike. So I laid them out here, but then I noticed, you know what, they're all pointing this way off the layout. So I'm actually going to switch these pages, and I'm just gonna have to be okay with that because I would rather have them start with the water and end with the actual hike than having them looking off the page. It just kind of bothered me. So I'm thinking that I'm going to arrange them. Well, let's see. I've got like some empty space here on this photo because I think I'm going to have this kind of like cocked to the side, and that will give me a little embellishment area here. Can kind of do that, and then over here I'm going to have it be kind of a running line like this because I'm thinking I'm going to have some paper strips at the bottom and at the top. Maybe I'll give myself a little more room at the top. I often gravitate toward these linear designs, but I'm trying to branch out and doing things a little bit more like angled like this. So I'm going to try to add some angles in here just for fun. I was thinking this one could fit up here, and I could kind of tilt this one because we have a bunch of just dead empty space here, so we can add the photo there. And then I've got an embellishment cluster here, and I'm actually going to add some mats to these. So I already cut some, and I'm thinking that these 3 here, especially since they're going all the way across the page, might be a little bit too wide. Just making sure I've got 1 mat behind each one, not 2. So let me just kind of try that out. If I've got these lined up, this one's going to be kind of hanging off the page. So I think I'm going to tilt that one too. I was afraid of that, so I sort of had a backup plan. I think I'm going to tilt this one as well so it kind of tucks under because I got some dead space there. And I'll put it at the same angle as this one. Maybe bring it, I kind of like it up a little higher than the other ones. So we'll see. I might end up like that. Bring this over a little. Okay, so I've got a little title or a little embellishment cluster here, maybe here, and then up here. And so to make these photo mats stand out, I'm going to ink around the edges, and you can see that right here. I tested on one of them because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do pine or avocado. So the color in these trees, they were such a bright green. As you can see, like I edit my photos, but they were naturally just this bright of a green. And so this is the pine ink, and this is the avocado ink, which matches those trees exactly. But I don't think it's enough contrast. I like the contrast of the pine, and I think it's going to help those photos pop a little bit more. Just like the contrast of the white against all of this green, if I had put an avocado or a pine mat, it wouldn't pop as much. So here's that avocado, and it just really blends into the background. And all of these have a lot of green in the background. While it would pop off of here, it just doesn't pop off that background. And same with this. It just makes it look so dark, and it doesn't do anything for the photos. It just kind of like blends into the photos. So that's why I typically use white when I'm matting my photos, because most of the time my background is dark and that white really pops. And you may know that a lot of times I double mat my photos, but I didn't really have the space on this layout, especially since I'm already having to tuck this under. So I'm going to go ahead and do this little treatment to all of the photo mats so that that white will pop off that background, because I want to have that white background If you were putting these photos onto a darker background, you wouldn't necessarily need to do that. But I've got so many photos and so much color, I wanted to keep that background white. So I'm just going direct to paper with my pine ink pad. And you can, it depends on how much ink you want on there. If you want it to be just real subtle, you can just go very gently against the edge. Let me show you on this next one. You can just go very gently and see how that doesn't have a whole lot of color. It's more subtle, but then it doesn't really pop off the background as much. So I'm kind of tilting my ink pad a little bit more. So instead of doing more 90 degrees or maybe just a little more than 90 degrees, I guess less than 90 degrees, I'm going more flat to the paper, and that gets more ink around those edges. So it just depends on the look that you want. You could also take your foam blending tool, and that will give you more ink around the edges without these lines. But I just thought that those lines would kind of add to the character and just add a little something extra since I don't have that second mat like I used to do. So I'll go ahead and ink the rest of these and then we'll be back. Okay, so I've got all of that done, and see how the white makes the photos pop, and then even though you have quite a bit of green, you still have a lot of white showing too, and they are gonna pop off of your white page. Now I wanted to use this amazing change of scenery paper pack for this layout. Now I showed this a couple of videos ago, and I used all of my favorite paper up. So if you caught this video, I used this amazing watercolor look like scenery background paper, and I love that because it brings in the dark and the light colors. So I'll link to this at the end if you missed it. But I do still have this paper that looks kind of like postage stamps. It's quite busy, so what I'm gonna do is use it sparingly in small strips. So what I'm thinking is having it just go like an inch across the top and see how it brings in all of the dark and that lime green, like avocado color from the photos, but having that white background still helps the photos remain the star of the show, because obviously that's what we want, right? And then I think I'm gonna have it at the bottom too, but this kit comes with some amazing die cuts, and I'm thinking, even though in Indiana there weren't many pine trees like here in Colorado, I'm thinking that I want to have that border because I just think it's so cool. And since this photo is going to be covering it, I'm going to snip it, so I'm not going to have any behind my photo here to save as much as possible. And same over here if this is going to cover the whole thing. But this here doesn't pop quite enough against the craft, so I think I'm going to add just a small strip of the green. And if you can see here, there's like little bird tracks, and I just thought that was really cute. It's almost like the tracks that we're making. So I think that I'm gonna have just a small strip, making sure that those little bird tracks are what show right between those. And I think that is gonna be good. And I'll do the same thing up here, but I might actually tear it here since I won't have the die cut above it. And I'll tear it and have that be kind of a textural element there. So I think I'm gonna do that and span it across both pages. Here I've cut my strips. The bottom postage strips are cut at 2 inches, and then I'm tearing off a little bit, so they end up being about 1 3/4 inches once they're torn. So I'm just going to tear the right side toward me, and that reveals the white core of the paper. And then I'm going to use my fingers to just kind of ruffle that up. And I decided that it still didn't quite pop enough, so I'm grabbing my pine ink pad again, the same one I used around my photos, and I'm going to brush that along that torn edge, and it just adds a little bit of extra something. This would also look really good with toffee ink, which is the color of those pine tree die cuts. And for the pine green patterned paper, I didn't cut it quite big enough to tear because I wasn't planning to tear it. I cut it to about 1/2 inch. So instead I'm taking my nail and just sort of roughing up the edge. If you don't have nails or don't want to use your nails, you can use the edge of your scissors. You don't even have to open up your micro tip scissors. Just use the edge when they're closed, and it just gives it a subtle ruffle, not quite as much as tearing, but still adds some interest and dimension, and it's just really fun. So I'm going to ink around the edges of that too. I didn't think that I was going to tear or ruffle the edges of the green because I thought it was going to be underneath those pine trees, but I ended up layering it on top of the pine trees because that pine tree border has quite enough space at the bottom to layer the paper. Now I've got my photo in place, and I'm just going to snip that border where it's not going to show so I can save that for another project. I love this border so much, I didn't want to waste any bit of it. So I'll have 2 small pieces from each side of the page to use somewhere else. Now it's time to start adding my embellishments. I found this sticker on the sticker sheet that says, "This is your sign to take a walk," and the colors and the shape just fit perfectly up there. I ended up pulling that photo down a bit because then the title is what sticks up above the rest of those photos, and I like the way that looks. And then I pulled off some other stickers from the sticker sheet thinking I could tuck these little trees and leaves everywhere. There was a little spot on my photo I wanted to cover, so I just used a leaf to do that. I wasn't liking both of these same leaves kind of opposite each other, so I pulled in a different leaf, so those are a little bit different. And then there are also some pine tree die cuts that come in this bundle, and they even have these little like wood grain trunks that you can add. They're out of a different material, so that's kind of fun. You could also use them without the trunks, you don't have to, but I liked the extra little bit of height that gave. So I think that these 2 trees are going to look good tucked above that photo there. And then I think the other one over here somewhere, trying to make sure that it looks balanced across the page because these 2 pieces add quite a big pop of that dark green color. So I think I like it here, and I'm actually going to tuck it behind my little border here so it's kind of amidst those smaller trees too. I think that's fun, and I'll have to trim this trunk here, but I'm liking that so far. I'm going to bring in a few other pieces that have blue because I've got blue in the title. There was this little saying that says Wanderlust that's got blue writing. It adds just a bit of blue, and then this little tag that I'm going to add the location and the date. I don't have to do much journaling for this because I've scrapbooked it before, but just wanted to have a little bit and add some little doodads, some little hearts and stars and small arrows and things like that from the die cut pieces that come in this bundle. So a couple of things that I want to mention about making sure your photos pop. I added the white mats because I like to have an extra mat around my photo. You could certainly put your photos straight onto the white background if you'd like, especially if they're like mine where there is a darker background in the photos and you're putting them on a white background. They are going to pop. I just like that extra look that you get and the extra dimension from having a mat, and then inking around the edges in that contrasting color just helps to further pop your photos, beyond just putting them onto that white background. And then having them on a white background is going to help them pop as well, whether they're on a mat or not, because we do have a lot of busy patterned paper, and I love using patterned paper. I love busy pattern paper, non-busy pattern paper. I want to use it all. And so when you do use pattern paper that's busy like this, it's helpful when you just use it sparingly. So it brings in all of the colors and that fun look of the paper, but without being overwhelming. If you had brought that down behind the photos, your photos would get kind of lost on that paper. So that white background really helps make your photos pop. So I've added all of my embellishments where I wanted them, and I wanted to have just a little bit of something behind these trees. It was just a little blank for me where those long trunks were. So I spotted this mountain stamp that's in the stamp set that comes with this bundle. This bundle comes with a lot. There's the paper pack and sticker sheet, the die cuts in several colors, and extra cardstock and stamps. And all of this is available only in the bundle. So I'll talk about that in a moment, but I wanted to add a stamp of this mountain behind this photo here. I thought that would add some nice contrast behind the trees, but I was testing it here on my scrap paper and I thought it was just a little too busy. It was too much with that dark blue. But I had an idea to kind of tone it down. So I'm going to mark where my photo is because I'm going to peel this photo back so I can kind of stamp so it's behind, coming out from behind the photo. I didn't want it resting on top. I wanted it to be like it was coming out from behind. So I'm going to ink it up in the Sapphire again and then stamp it and stamp it again so I get that second generation inking look. I'm going to test that out and see if I like that behind those trees. And I can already tell I do. It's just, it brings in that blue. I wanted to have a little more blue since I have it on the left page a little bit more and fills in that spot, but it's just very subtle. I decided to pull up this photo next to it as well because the mountain is going to go further over. And I thought about putting a piece of scrap paper over the photo and then stamping it, but I would have had a tiny little gap between the background paper and the photo when I stamped it, and I want it to be nice and smooth. Now it can be kind of daunting to stamp right onto your layout, so notice I have that foam piece that came with the stamp set behind my background paper. That foam comes in every single one of Close to My Heart stamp sets, and it helps give you a little bit of extra cush. The other thing I did was I tested it first on the scrap paper, and then I also held the stamp down onto my paper for just a moment so it had time to soak in before I lifted it straight up. And I really like the effect of that little mountain there. It fills in that space and adds more blue just like I wanted. So I'm just going to get some of these pieces back in place. And while I do that, I wanted to talk about this collection. It is a bundle that's available through Close to My Heart. They are holding a National Scrapbooking Day event. It is over 2 days, May 5th and 6th, and it's going to be virtual on Facebook. And if you can't make it those days, it'll stay up so you can watch it even after it's over. Whenever you get a chance, it'll stay up. And there's going to be several projects. There's several bundles available, and there are scrapbook layouts, cards, a mini album. You can get just the bundles that you're interested in and create along with Close to My Heart, or you can also get the bundles just on their own. So like I've got this change of scenery kit that I got, and truth be told, I got a second one because I needed more of that paper that was my favorite. So that's supposed to be here really soon. I just couldn't help myself. But I like to show you guys other ways to use kits and paper. So that's what I'm doing here. And I just kind of like doing my own thing. But if you like to follow along with a guide, there are other projects with guides and everything that you can play along with. So I will have all that information linked down in the description below. Just click the see more underneath this video, and I'll also have all of the products that I use listed below. If you'd like to see still shots, I also have my Instagram and Facebook links down below. Be sure to hit that thumbs up, and if you missed that other change of scenery layout, I have that linked right here for you. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.